41st comeback. How do you guys keep doing this?
I mean, we've done it so many times, so yeah, that was exciting.
The drought is over! 20 years of waiting has come to an end here in Pittsburgh! It's time to party in Miami!
The Marlins celebrated their 30th anniversary in 2023 by highlighting their best moments in club history, mixed in with bringing back classic Marlins that help shape the franchise. And of course, rocking those teal pinstripe throwback uniforms every Friday home game. As we paid tribute to the past, we were introduced to the future on a May 12th night at Lone Depot Park, Kyle. And I remember that night vividly, of course, because of the magnitude of the start for Eury Pérez. But we were trying to figure out, how do we say his name right? We just didn't want to screw this moment up for this young phenom that we were so excited to see debut.
Well, and people had been waiting for a long time to see him. And I thought what was so interesting about Eury making his debut is that when he took the mound that night in May, a lot of people thought about Jose Fernandez. And whether that was right, wrong, somewhere in between, thought the magnitude of the moment called for many people to flash back to what we saw with a young kid by the name of Jose back in 2013. The circumstances were different, but the expectations and the hype surrounding that night were not. And I think oftentimes, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, people have these grand visions of this kid changing the course in the direction of a franchise. And what I don't think is crazy to say is that he has and had the opportunity to do that, because what we saw from who was a consensus top right-hander in all of the minor leagues was not a flash in the pan. It's a young man that's only going to continue to get better. And when Eury took the mound that night, I did feel a little bit of what we felt back in 2013. But I think it's hard when watching him this past season not to envision what that looks like moving forward. And again, when you are as good as he is and as good as he was in a small sample size, I don't think it's outlandish to say that he can truly be a difference-making generational talent that can alter the course of the Miami Marlins franchise.
And before we get into the game, his start against the Cincinnati Reds, let's go back. He was signed as an international free agent back on July 2nd, 2019. That 2020 season, of course, was postponed. The fact that he was up this early is an accomplishment in itself, but you kind of hit on the Jose Fernandez piece. Why do you think he was so hyped up to this point so soon?
Well, just watch it. It's 6'8", it's 6'9", and it's 98 to 100 miles an hour with a changeup and a breaking ball, and you just don't see that type of fearlessness for a guy that was that young as well. You have to remember how young he was when he made his debut. And the thing that we would constantly hear from Skip Schumacher was he should be a junior in college. Right. And he was making his major league debut. And again, when you're in that position and you're as good as he is and as good as he was when we first saw him, people correlate like he's so young and so good, he must be great. And that starts to set an expectation that this kid is otherworldly. This is nothing we've ever seen before. So I think that's where you get a lot of that from. And I mean, for me, he lived up to the billing for a lot of the year until he kind of ran out of gas down the stretch.
So Eury came up in a really interesting time for Miami. They were 19-19.
Yeah.
Injuries were obviously coming and going, just like every team across Major League Baseball. But the fact that Eury came up in a position where the Marlins were, of course, early in the year, but they needed a boost, and to rely on Eury Pérez this early on, I thought was very symbolic of what the organization thought. But as far as his debut, Kyle, I feel like it wouldn't do it justice without talking about how he got called up. And that beautiful video that Sandy Alcantara, one of his mentors, basically getting called in the office, Eury Pérez was, and got this call from Sandy Alcantara that you're coming up to the majors.
Yeah, and he was in Double-A. Remember, it's a kid that has never stepped foot on a mound in Triple-A, and he was called up from Double-A Pensacola, and the manager brought him in the office, and the organization obviously knew what they were going to do. They had Sandy record a video. It basically said, "My brother, I'll see you soon, and you're coming to the major leagues." And it was obviously an emotional moment. for Eury, and I do think there's quite the interesting dichotomy and dynamic between him and Sandy, because you see a lot of the same stuff. And you see the electric type of persona that the individual carries, and it's no, it wasn't a mistake that they put them together in locker mates in spring training.
That is only the third run. Swing and a miss on a hard slider.
Te tengo una mala noticia, es que voy a tener ahora que verte la cara todos los días, de verdad. Pero, mi hermano, ¿tú crees que tú estás listo para pisar en Grandes Ligas? De verdad muy contento por ti, bien merecida esa oportunidad. Te vemos pronto por aquí, se te quiere.
And that Sandy is truly taking this young kid under his wing. So, and I think to your point a little bit, when you think about Eury and you think about the debut, I think people immediately think about Sandy as well, and it allows you to think like, do we have two Sandys? Well,
Right.
Luzardo's rolling. Do we have three Sandys? Because the bar is Sandy. Because 2022, he was the best pitcher in baseball. He was the National League Cy Young Award winner. For my money, he was the best pitcher in baseball. So then when you start to hear all these stories, because that's what fans rely on, and they listen to us and they watch TV, Sandy's taking this kid under his wing. Wait till you see this kid. He's going to be unbelievable. It's like, oh, now you see him, and he looks the same, and he's got the same charisma. And it's like, do we have two Sandys, right? Then, like we said very early on, it allows you to dream about what it looks like down the road. Now, I mean, things happen, and obviously Sandy's not around next year because of the Tommy John and stuff, but, I think there was so much that got built up into this pressure cooker about this kid at his age that it just set these expectations that, for me, I thought he lived up to.
So his actual start against the Cincinnati Reds, if you go back, he went 4 2/3, gave up 4 hits, 2 runs, punched out 7. But like you said, there's a certain eye test, I think, as far as not just baseball goes, just all sports. Does he look the part? Does he feel the part? How is he handling certain situations? And I thought those questions were answered fairly early. Sure, it was only one start, but I don't think there's any question, even though it was only 4 2/3. And the Marlins actually didn't end up winning this game. This was a 7-4 win for Cincinnati. It was an organizational win that night on Friday.
Yeah, and he allowed 4 hits and he allowed a couple of runs. Remember, the damage done against Eury in a couple of starts was the long ball.
Yep.
He was getting punished on the fastball. They could not hit his breaking ball. Those were the only 2 runs that he allowed in the game. So, the one thing I go back to when I listen back and I watch back the Eury start was, remember, he was like a batter into the game, and he felt something mechanical. And it might have been 5 pitches into his major league debut, and you saw him step off the mound, and I don't know if he was talking to himself, but he was making an adjustment on the mound. When you're 19 and 20 years old on this stage behind us with people and all those eyes on you on the biggest possible stage you can pitch, many guys at that age in their debut, they're sick to their stomach because they're so nervous. Eury was making corrections 5 pitches into his major league debut, and I thought, above everything, to me, that signaled something, that you had the presence of mind to know that maybe you were getting a little bit ahead of yourself, so few pitches into your major league debut, and the presence of mind to make a correction, to me, was like, he seems unfazed by the moment.
Yep.
And this kid is going to be really special.
His presence that night and his presence across the entire season, and I want to get into some of his best starts and your favorite starts, but let's talk about his presence, because when the Marlins brought him up, it wasn't just every 5th day you felt like you had a chance to win. There was a different energy in that clubhouse. Yeah. The Marlins were 32-19 before he was optioned on July 7th. What do you think, or what kind of spark do you think Eury provided in that clubhouse for the Marlins this year?
I don't know if it was so much the clubhouse, but for me, again, right or wrong, it was the Jose effect. We saw that years ago. There was a different energy every time the kid pitched every 5th day. There was something different. Now, Eury most often was pitching 6 and 7 days after his start, and they were rightfully doing right by the young man. But I would say I do think, as guys started to watch their teammate, and at that age, and to see the way that he was carrying himself, I do think they probably quickly developed a sense of confidence in that, oh, our guy's pitching tonight.
Yep.
Because when he was sent down and optioned, I felt something different. Me personally, I felt like the clubhouse was like, oh man, we just lost our guy.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
they still had all their guys, but they lost their guy. And to me, and to your point, there was obviously an effect that he had in the clubhouse to what I felt was see a bit of a shift in things when he was optioned. Then ultimately, it's kind of beautiful the way the game works. He makes his debut against Cincinnati, and he re-debuts
Against you.
in Cincinnati
Yep.
on the road in August.
Kyle is one of many amazing memories in 2023. Thanks everyone for watching. We will put this, of course, on our podcast page. And again, this is Marlins Rerun. Strom, Kyle Sielaff. We'll talk to you next time.